Hello, everybody, and welcome back. I am have everything set up and ready to go. Before I start, though, I do want to do a quick audio test, make sure everything is sounding all right in stream. This will be the Cosmic Weave. Now, after it gets started, I'll have it ready to go on Rumble and test it. It sounds good on Kick. It's going. It sounds good on X. Sounds good on Twitch. Now let me check live stream on YouTube. May have to hit refresh on that one. Yep, it's there, so at least I know it's there. And it is good. Firing up now. Okay, sounds good on YouTube. Go to D Live, see what it sounds like there. Sounds good on D Live. So we are good to go. All right. So I'm going to take a quick drink of this coffee and then we'll start the show. I usually do it 3 count. That way I can use it for editing purposes. I decided to do it out loud because I noticed that it's not as precise if I don't do it in the audio. When I hear it, I can start it when or start the video on the edit when I in the count. So that's going to from now on be out loud. So here we go. 3, 2, 1, now. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Cosmic Weave. Today is going to be basically a recap day. Now, what I'm going to do is go through the readings that I had for the previous 5 videos. This is episode 6 right here, and I'm basically going to go through it and read it out loud. Whenever I come across something that I want to discuss, I'll stop the reading and discuss it, uh, uh, at, and then move on after I'm done. So this first part was what I wanted to call primordial beginnings, and it also had something to do with the brain and things of that nature when it comes to the cosmic weave. Now, just so people know, a lot of the stuff that I'm discussing has to do with the cosmic weave. The only way, or the best way of finding out what that's about is Google the words cosmic weave, and it'll give you a fair example of it. Now, even though I am talking about the cosmic weave, not everything is in line with what you'll read when you find it. There's some things that I believe cosmic weave would consist of, as well as what they say. But one thing that I did incorporate that's on my own was the concept of primordial ooze, or the primordial soup, however you would interpret it as. This has to do with a lot of people who are into parapsychology and they're into remote viewing. They always talk about primordial, 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 but you'll never hear them explain very much about what they mean when they say the word primordial. So, what I did is I went in and I started doing research, and I've been doing research on this for quite a while, to be honest with you. And there's a lot of things that kind of stick out to me, and especially when it comes to this primordial issue. and how it links with a lot of things. Now, these are, like I said, primordial beginnings. So before there were stars, okay, and planets or light, and there was a endless void, a vast nothingness where the universe was slumbering. Okay, and it waited for a spark to awaken it. Uh, this was a time when space and time were indistinguishable. However, there was a single constant force, and that was the formless, timeless essence of what would later become creation, destruction, and transformation. A great cosmic energy existed in perfect tension between the opposing forces of life and death. Everything possible, no, every possibility, every form of life that could be created, and every structure that could be dismantled resided here. It was the building blocks of existence, but also it was its undoing. So, right there, what I'm saying is that the same things that uh, ended up creating the building blocks of existence is also the same thing that is is also its undoing. So they're intertwined. Okay. Now from it, entire galaxies would later be born, only to collapse again into dust. So you have the creation and then the destruction. And that's very important to understand. In this place, the universe had not yet found its rhythm, but within its heart, it simmered, waiting for the moment when it would emerge to shape what we would eventually call reality. So, what we're talking about here isn't the cosmos alone. It's reality, the way freaking we see things and what's real, reality, the real world, everything. So that's what's created out of this. Eventually, from it manifests the foul odors of decay and rot, the decomposition of water-based organic matter, breaking down components into simpler substances. The putrescence of this water compound transformed and degraded materials. This was the process of putrefaction, where organic matter decomposed within this water-rich environment. Chaos existed in its formless state before creation, and from these waters of creation, raw material emerged, bringing forth life. Now, right here, you have the alchemical uh, perspective of all of this. You have this cosmic ooze, or this primordial ooze, with foul odors of decay and rot, and the smell of decomposition from the watery based organic matter. Now, it's breaking down these compounds and it's creating simpler substances. It's becoming simpler and uh, more. Uh, how would you say that? Becoming smaller, basically. Simpler substances. Now, the putrefaction is the whole part of it. If you go in and you look up what putrefaction is, when it comes to alchemy, you'll find out that that's actually a part of the process. And this is what I'm bringing out here. And this is another one of those things that I noticed whenever it came to things that stuck out to me. So, um, alchemy actually goes back quite a long way, and eventually I do want to start getting into more subjects on the topic of alchemy, especially ancient alchemy, because A lot of people are into the newer versions of what alchemy is, but they don't realize that these are ancient beliefs that go way, way back thousands of years. So I do want to get into that and maybe start out from the beginnings and kind of go through it. Now, creation began through the vast formless void of chaos, which contained the potential for all existence, a chaotic fluid state of unformed matter that would eventually form earth, water, and all the desires of mankind. So, right there, it's I'm also talking about not only is it creating out of chaos, it's not only creating our chaotic fluids, these chaotic fluid states. Not only are they creating unformed matter that would form earth and water, but it's also creating our desires, our thoughts, our emotions, our dreams. That's where the whole thing about reality comes into play. Um, through this, it's creating what we would eventually call our reality. So um, you got to think about it on levels like that. Um, Now, from these beginnings, a purified state of new life emerged. That's the beginning, when everything was new and it was fresh and nothing was tainted. Okay? So you have a purified state of new life. When you get into that, you start getting into areas like Zoroastrianism and things of that nature. And even in the Bible, where it talks about when the earth was created, there was the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve. So this is what's being discussed there. Now, from formless decay, matter within this endless void, fertile mud from the primordial waters gave rise to life. Dissolution within these chaotic waters became a medium for transformation. So, right there, you have dissolution, okay, and that's another alchemical process which you can check out and find out what's going on there. And that's dissolution from the chaotic waters. Um, this became the medium for transformation. And transformation is something that goes into deeper concepts like resurrection, things of that nature, change, how things never stay the same, stuff of that nature. That's where things start getting really, really interesting when it comes to this whole thing. I've said it a few times in the streams where whoever came up with the concept for this cosmic weave was brilliant. Okay, they covered a lot of bases. Um, I've actually wanted to do something for this topic for a long time, and I finally was able to pull enough information together to where I could do it. The reason why I've been having such a hard time at getting it going, though, is because it's not only hard to like explain it to you guys here on the stream, but writing it down and making sure that I write it out appropriately is also another issue, because there's a lot of things here that is repetitive. Not only is it repetitive, but it's very complicated and hard to really articulate, I guess you could say, when it comes to writing out the right words for what needs to be said to describe it. So that is that's what happens when you start talking about transformation. You start getting into conversations like this. Now, the The decomposition before regeneration of this fertile mud from the primordial waters eventually led to the creation of higher forms. And with higher forms, we're talking about not just humans, but we're talking about animals. We're talking about life, what we consider life. Um, Now, there is life such as trees and plants and vegetation, stuff like that. Um, so that also is something that could be higher forms as well. It all depends on how far you're willing to go with that whole concept. Now, from the interaction of these elements arose the element of wind, and from this, the creation of earth, air, fire, and water eventually led to life. So we have our elements. First, there was the element of life, and from this, the creation of earth, air, fire, and water. So you have the primordial void of nothingness that eventually forms the ooze. And then you have the wind, which in turns creates the elements of earth, air, fire, and water. So with me, that is where I go further and I say, and water, eventually leading to life. So because of these elements, life came into being. Now, the cyclical nature of putrescence and rebirth occurred through flux and transformation of the waters. From this primordial mud, the Axis Mundi was also born, linking different realms, the primordial waters of the void, earth, and celestial order of divine realms. Chaos preceded structured reality, where putrescence led to rebirth. In the lower realms of the Axis Mundi remained the endless primordial void, with its fertile mud from the primordial waters of creation, a state of dissolution before transformation, undefined, formless, and decomposing. From this realm, the Axis Mundi began to reach into the heavens, first by growing its foundation of roots out of decay and putrefaction, but eventually ascending into the higher realms. A cycle of destruction led to rebirth, a bridge between the chaotic decay of the primordial and the divine enlightenment of the heavens. The journey of the soul through the Axis Mundi, which unites all realms, achieved its ultimate transformation. Once before there were stars, planets, and even time, deep within the dark void, an ancient force began to stir. Rising from the depths of this vast nothingness, the primordial waters of creation began to churn in chaotic waves. It longed to be shaped, given form, but it also resisted, fearing the order that would be imposed upon it. Now, right there, I brought in this concept of the primordial ooze, resisted, but it still longed to be shaped. Now, the reason for that is it wanted to be shaped, but it also resisted because it feared the order that was going to be imposed upon it. Now, in ancient times, chaos was considered evil, and order was considered good. So, from that, you can go into this with the idea that even though this primordial ooze wished to be formed and structured into something, it also resisted that because it knew that order would be placed upon it, and it resisted it out of fear because it didn't want to be have to deal with that order. This takes dualism out of the situation, and it creates a sense of duality, which I've mentioned before in previous episodes, quite a few actually. The difference between dualism and duality, and this was the secret ingredient that I had a hard time with before I decided to write this, because I didn't dive deep into the whole concept of duality, and I've always done a little research here and there, but I never really took time to actually figure it out and see what this was all about. Um, until here recently with me and Bob Dub, we did it last year, and it helped open up a whole new way of thinking when it comes to a lot of this, because I finally was able to grasp the idea that dualism is two opposing forces that fight or conflict with one another. Um, Whereas duality is two opposing forces that actually complement one another. So there's no there's no fight, there's no struggle between them. You know what I mean? They actually accompany them. And when you think of stuff like that, what you're thinking of is there's birth and then there's death. Um, they don't they don't conflict with one another because everybody's born, or everything's born, and everything dies. What happens in between, that's not birth and that's not death. You know what I mean? So the idea of just birth and just death itself is a duality. So, and that's pretty good when you start looking at things like that, and you start seeing things in a different perspective. So that opened me up to where I was actually able to um, understand a lot of this stuff, what was going on. Now, the Axis Monday, I want to point that out. That is my interpretation of the cosmic for the cosmic weave of what they refer to as nexuses. Now, in popular belief, when it comes to the cosmic weave, they believe there's more than one nexus, and there's ley lines. And you'll hear stories about ley lines that are all around the earth, but this is supposed to be all over the cosmos, the universe as well. All of these ley lines are everywhere, and they're connected by nexuses. Now, me personally, I don't believe in that concept. If this theory is correct, I believe there's one nexus, and this one nexus is what I refer to as the Axis Monday. So when I say the Axis Monday, this is what I'm talking about. So that's something that's very, very important to understand. Now, forms began to shimmer with the colors of the universe, reflecting the endless expanse of creation. The light of the cosmos illuminated the primordial energies that flowed through the Axis Mundi. Bodies wove through the void with grand designs and intricate patterns. The heat of 1,000 suns flickered with the energy of creation, while the forces of life ignited the spark of consciousness in the universe, bringing stars to life. Ice created stillness, the force of order and preservation, shimmering with a soft blue glow. This was to be the fire. No, this was to be the fire of creation in the cold embrace of destruction. So, from the sacrifice being, the animal gave life to create this cosmic bridge of the axis Monday. Death and decay led to new transformations. Primordial chaos gave rise to order. Decay birthed creation, and the animal's sacrifice generated the bridge of the axis Monday between realms. Through love and strife, flux and transformation, the cyclical nature of putrescence and the rebirth resonated. Through the decay or decomposition of water-based organic materials, which often resulted in the breakdown of compounds into simpler substances, the first body or structure from the primordial mud gave birth to the world. A cosmic being was sacrificed and dismembered to create the world and the universe itself. This included each realm, multiple worlds or layers of existence within the axis Monday. This also suggests an ascent of the soul, where base matter was purified through trials, and the axis Monday served as a passage between realms to test transformation. Now, right here, we have the process of alchemy taking place, which is a part of the ascension of the soul. And that is where base matter is purified through trials. And the Axis Monday served as a passage between realms. And the reason for that, passing through it, is is to test the transformation, the alchemical transformation. So the journey began in the primordial mud, from which life emerged, and then through chaos, where order had to be carved from the formless void and blackened through putrefaction before rebirth. So before rebirth, you had to have trials. You had to be tested. You had to go through these trials and tribulations before you were reborn. And from that emerged from primordial death stronger. Uh, at, After that, actually, you're emerging from the primordial depths stronger and wiser, passing through the cycle of death and rebirth, just as putrescence is necessary for new life. The soul seemed to climb towards the heavenly divine for spiritual enlightenment, encountering primordial darkness to break down the ego, then returning with wisdom and final enlightenment. This is where you start delving into the whole area of your ego, placing yourself above things rather than showing the opposite, which is humility, and learning how to show humility rather than pride. Because out of pride comes ego. How do this is something that a lot of people have a hard time with, because they've been brought up thinking that to be prideful was a good thing. It shows that you're worth something and all that, and that's not the case. When you build an ego, you're actually setting yourself apart from the divine, and you're straying away from where you're supposed to be naturally. Um, and with when you're not doing that, you're actually you're breaking down the ego and returning through your trials and tribulations with wisdom and eventually final enlightenment. Now, it's believed that accessing fatal brainwave states allow for deeper introspective creativity, healing, and spiritual knowledge. It grants better understanding or enlightenment from the void, a deep cosmic state in divine creation. Theta represents the axis Mundi, the source of everything, and embodies the primal force of existence that transcends ordinary experience. Theta, or the axis Mundi, delineates the complexity of time into an algorithm of computational theory, indicating the asymptotic behavior of the algorithm, where runtime grows at a specific state relative to input size. Now, here is where things start getting a little interesting. Later on, I am going to be going into another part of this where I will be discussing. I'll be discussing things that concern technology as well as the human mind and these waves that are taking place within the human brain, as well as in the natural world. So um, eventually that's going to go farther into technology, believe it or not. A lot of this opens up into what's going on now with the new technologies we're coming out with. So expect that in future episodes. But I don't want to get too deep into it until I actually have it all written out and ready to go for the next few episodes. So with that being said, I will continue. Now, theta, or the axis Mundi, whichever term is preferred, constitutes death, the afterlife, and the passage of the soul into another realm within the axis Mundi. The circle represents the world, the cosmos, the eternity, signifying wholeness, unity, and an infinite existence without beginning or end. It symbolizes completeness in the infinite, the cosmic in its totality. The soul of the world was crafted from the axis Mundi into harmonious ordered perfection, a divine form with eternal qualities. The cosmic perfection of ordered cycles, where the heavens and the stars moved in circular orbits in divine motion, a cosmic whole, and an orderly, continuous completeness of unity within the universe. Time was cyclical, as was life, with birth, death, and rebirth, as well as the world itself, where we're constantly renewed. The eternal cycle of life and the world's recurring rebirth, with everything interconnected and perpetually transformed within the framework of an eternal rhythm of divine completeness. The soul of the world and the universe, the divine source governing the order of the cosmos, the absolute unknowable forces that bind the universe together, the world in perfect equilibrium, both physically and metaphysically, harmonizing the material and spiritual worlds. The physical world was part of a greater cosmic and divine plan. In numerology, the vibration of zero carries an intrinsic meaning that amplifies qualities. It binds relationships that are not just personal, but also communal and spiritual. The presence of each zero in numerology intensifies energies, granting heightened spiritual significance. Zero represents divine guidance, infinite potential, and cosmic energy, urging trust in the universal flow, divine timing, and faith in the journey. Zero is an enhancer in numerology, amplifying core numbers. It suggests leadership, new beginnings, and a far-reaching influence. It can indicate spiritual or divine dimensions, hinting at unlimited potential within a cosmic framework. The repeated presence of zeros suggests vast untapped energy, accessible through meditation, introspection, and spiritual practices. It symbolizes the infinite, the void, and untapped potential, both the beginning and the end, the Alpha and Omega. It represents spiritual journeys and deeper callings. Here, the primordial begins to take shape, twisting and coiling from the chaotic mass. Faint outlines emerge: stars, planets, galaxies, all forming within the void. Tides of the cosmos ebb and flow, transforming the primordial mud of creation and destruction into the great fabric of existence. A new order arises, one that embraces chaos and allows for infinite possibilities. Within this once chaotic, formless mass, the essence of transformation itself is born. A large mass of matter located in the dorsal part of the brain, known as the diencephalon, integrates, filters, and coordinates sensory and motor inputs for brain function. More than just a relay center, it ensures that the higher order brain functions, such as perception, cognition, and movement, operate seamlessly and efficiently. Clusters of nerve cells with specialized functions form nuclei within the brain, receiving inputs from various sensory and motor systems while sending output to different areas of the cerebral cortex. These nuclei are responsible for processing specific types of information, each serving a different function. The primary relay center for visual information from the retina to the visual cortex is the lateral geniculate nucleus. Here, visual input is filtered and organized before being transmitted to the brain for further processing. Similarly, the medial geniculate nucleus processes auditory signals, relaying information from the inner ear to the auditory cortex. Both sensory nuclei ensure the sensory inputs reach the correct region within the cerebral cortex, allowing us to perceive our environment accurately. If you touch a hot surface, a signal is relayed through the thalamus, prompting you to quickly withdraw your hand. The ventral posterior nucleus processes somatosensory information such as touch, pain, and temperature. This nucleus is crucial for perceiving physical sensations and coordinating responses based on sensory feedback. Motor coordination depends on both the ventral lateral and ventral anterior nuclei, which are essential components of the brain's motor circuitry. These nuclei receive input from the basal ganglia and cerebellum and relay signals to the motor cortex, governing voluntary movement. Without these seamless integrations, motor control would be fragmented, leading to difficulties in performing smooth and purposeful actions. Acting as a critical filter, the thalamus adjusts the intensity, timing, and synchronization of signals within the brain. This regulation ensures precision and fluidity in movements necessary for activities such as walking, riding, and playing a musical instrument. Hold on a minute, guys. Okay, I am back. Sorry about that. Um, now, with that being said, I'm going to continue where I left off. The thalamus also regulates states of consciousness, sleep, and wakefulness, contributing to the generation of maintaining of oscillatory rhythms in the brain. This is crucial for sleep patterns, especially during slow wave sleep. Thalamocortical neurons synchronize with the cortex through rhythmic firing, creating brain waves that determine different sleep stages. While awake, the thalamus selectively allows certain stimuli to reach the cortex, acting as a gatekeeper for sensory information by filtering out irrelevant noise. This enables alertness and focus, preventing sensory overload by controlling the flow of information to the brain. For example, the thalamus helps us concentrate on a conversation in a crowded room by regulating which signals reach conscious awareness. The cerebellothalamic pathway facilitates the transmission of motor information from the cerebellum to the cerebral cortex through the thalamus. This pathway contributes to balance, coordination, and motor learning, which are integrated into the brain's overall motor plan. Once the cerebellum makes adjustments and fine-tunes movements, it sends these sensory input signals to the thalamus. The thalamus then relays the information to the motor cortex, which issues final motor commands to the muscles. To maintain posture, adjust muscle contraction force, and execute skilled motor skills. Constant communication is needed between the cerebellum and the thalamus. Through neuroplasticity, the brain can reorganize itself by forming new neural connections within the thalamic circuits. This genetic underpinning of thalamic development and function, the thalamocortical loop, and the dynamic interplay between the thalamus and cerebral cortex are essential for memory, attention, and decision making. Now, the neuroplasticity is the one part of all of this that really sticks out. It's very important to understand that concept and what's going on within the brain when it comes to what I've been discussing. This is something that continuously pops up in different areas too, not just within the brain, but also within the new technologies that I mentioned earlier when it comes to computers and things of that nature. You'll see this frequently occur, and it's really interesting. We're trying to synthesize this process now through technology. It's a really fascinating area of research that is actually pretty cool. So just wanted to stop and point that out before I go on further. Now, the thalamus is a hub for communication, integration, and coordination, playing a vital role in nearly every aspect of brain function, from motor control to sensory processing to consciousness and emotional regulation. It connects to other parts of the brain, particularly the cerebellum, help maintain a delicate balance for smooth and coordinated movement. Unique insights into brain function and plasticity have revealed that personality and cognitive changes can occur due to damage to different brain regions. Unexpected cognitive recoveries have been observed due to the brain's ability to reroute functions over time. For example, individuals who were once hard-working, responsible, and well-liked before an injury may become erratic, impulsive, and socially inappropriate afterwards, displaying rudeness, profanity, and vulgar language they'd never used before. This suggests damage to the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for impulse control, decision-making, and social behavior. Likewise, the sensory cortex processes touch and spatial awareness. Processes touch and spatial awareness. If damaged, if damaged, it can cause paralysis or loss of sensation on certain body parts. The brainstem controls vital functions such as breathing, heart rate, and consciousness. The middle cerebral artery supplies much of the brain's oxygenated blood. These regions also influence memory, emotional processing, and consciousness, with the limbic system playing a role in emotions and behavior. Neurons can rewire themselves, allowing undamaged areas of the brain to take over lost functions from damaged areas. This occurs by sprouting new dendrites and axons to reroute information. If the left hemisphere is damaged, the right hemisphere may compensate by taking over some language or motor functions. Through repetition, the brain can rewire the motor cortex, enabling individuals to regain partial function when a specific brain function is lost. Nearby or lost areas of the brain can adapt over time. The visual cortex, for instance, can be repurposed to process touch and sound. Even the prefrontal cortex can be rewired, allowing individuals to experience social changes to regain normal social abilities. Through synaptic pruning, the brain strengthens useful neural pathways and weakens unused ones. Repeated use of a pathway reinforces it. Even communication skills can be regained by retaining undamaged language areas of the brain. Retraining undamaged. Even communication skills can be regained by retraining undamaged language areas of the brain. The brain continuously redesigns its functional map, following the principles neurons that fire together wire together. Through reorganization, compensation, and training, the brain can adapt and recover from damage, demonstrating its remarkable ability to heal and restructure itself. From out of the chaotic, unknown reaches of the primordial void, necessity and fate emerged. With them came morality and predetermination. Events set with a place for each thing. Fate and destiny began to govern through a system of cosmic law within the universe. Necessity was unyielding and an inevitable force that shaped the universe into existence. All events within the universe would become predestined, unfolding according to predetermined order. Once again, the primordial waters of creation began to churn in chaotic waves, yearning to be shaped and formed, yet resisting out of fear of the order that would be imposed upon them. Within this process, however, the unchangeable laws of the universe did not yet apply. Out of this divine reasoning of predetermination, change began to take place, changes that would struggle against the established order of the cosmos, creating something new. From the ethics of predetermination, divine reasoning, and change emerged grace and understanding. Within the axis Mundi, floating in the vast expanse of the primordial waters, was the center of harmony, a guiding light that directed the flow of the primordial mud. Began to emerge from the waters. Forms shimmered with the color of the universe, reflecting an endless expanse of creation, a place where creation and destruction swirled together in an eternal spiral, where the boundaries between dimensions blurred and time folded in on itself. Deep within the axis Mundi, within its nucleus, resided a radiant sphere of energy, the very center of harmony. The primordial waters continued to resist the harmony, though while fate began to weave existence into being, laws of nature, through the power of change in a fixed course, became integrated into what we would call reality. From its beginning, the universe, through divine providence, determination, and free will, gave birth to acceptance, submission, and predetermination. The earth also emerged, creating a foundation of fertility, stability, life, existence, and interconnectedness between natural and divine forces. Structure was introduced to the universe through the earth's nurturing and sustaining force. From the earth's structure came life, the soul, abundance, and fertile plains introduced into the universe. Through the untamed chaos of creation, the separation of the earth and the heavens was revealed. The sky formed, and from it came light, bringing a bright celestial heavenly realm of divinity. The sky also brought thunder, rain, water, and divine authority over nature. The universe is alive, constantly shifting and transforming. It isn't static or something that needs to be preserved. The untamed chaos of creation revealed the separation of the earth from the heavens and the divine, the separation and balance of the fundamental forces of nature were critical steps in the creation of an ordered cosmos. From established order comes the creation of life within the natural world. Within the heart of the axis Mundi is where all information is carried, processed, integrated, and projected outward. Information is translated into patterns that can be interpreted and understood by the axis Mundi. Within its core, this processing center of information awaits the arrival of climbing and mossy fibers. These fibers deliver signals to the deep nuclei that exists within the heart of the axis Mundi. Here is where the axis Mundi transforms the raw data of existence into knowledge and action, acting as a core processor of the cosmos. It decodes information and integrates it into the broader cosmic narrative. After this process, the information is then elevated to a higher state of understanding. From established order comes the creation of life within the natural world. With it generates power. The Earth's cycle of birth, growth, and renewal follow. Earth is the life giver that embodies fertility, abundance, and nurturing care. Earth is also a formidable force, unleashing power through earthquakes, storms, and other natural phenomena. The destructive potential of late summer rains or the roaring winds of the north with their strong cold nature. The unpredictability of the eastern sky at dawn, bringing either rain or warm air. The favorable winds heralding spring, renewal, life, and consciousness reflects Earth's potential. Born into consciousness, just as death marks the cessation of breath, the soul, spirits, or ghosts are born into awareness. From the breath of life manifests divine inspiration, speech, and freedom. Each night we go through several sleep cycles, with a complete cycle lasting about 90 minutes. These cycles consist of different stages of sleep too. The stages are light sleep, deep sleep, which is slow wave sleep, and finally, rapid eye movement sleep. Most people discuss rapid eye movement sleep, but I'm going to focus on slow wave sleep instead. Slow wave sleep is sometimes called deep sleep, and it occurs during the third stage of non-rapid eye movement sleep. During this phase of sleep, the body repairs tissues, builds bones and muscles, strengthens the immune system, and is the most restorative phase of the sleep cycle. It is also an important time for memory formation and brain recovery. During the first part of the night, your body spends more time in slow wave sleep, but as the night progresses, you begin to spend more time in rapid eye movement sleep. Rapid eye movement sleep is the phase of sleep when dreams occur and is linked to emotional regulation and creative thinking. Slow wave sleep is marked by very slow and high amplitude brain waves called delta waves. This is where your heartbeat, breathing, and brain activity all slow down. This is the deepest part of sleep, and if interrupted, can lead to grogginess and disorientation upon waking. During infancy, the early childhood, deep sleep makes up a large part of our total sleep time. This is because deep sleep plays an important role in brain development and physical growth. As we become teenagers, we still experience a good amount of deep sleep, which allows for better learning, memory, and physical development. As we develop into young adults, though, the amount of sleep wave we experience begins to gradually decline. By the time we become older adults, around 60, our amount of deep sleep declines significantly, and we begin to frequently awaken during the night. This can result in lighter, more fragmented sleep and may affect memory, our energy levels, and our overall mood. Excuse me. Besides repairing and rebuilding tissues and muscles, supporting immune functions, and storing and consolidating memories, slow wave sleep is important for clearing waste products from the brain, emotional balance, decision making, and learning. Slow wave sleep or deep sleep is the brain's save button for our memories. We take in tons of information throughout the day, and not all of this is considered important for keeping to the brain. When we enter slow wave sleep, our brain begins to sort this information, deciding what to store and what to forget. Memory consolidation happens mostly during slow wave sleep. This is where the brain sorts short-term memories, then stores them with our long-term memories. The hippocampus is deeply involved in learning and memory. It works closely with the neocortex during slow wave sleep. The hippocampus relays recent experiences to the neocortex for storage, thus strengthening the connection between neurons. This helps in times when you are studying, practicing new skills, and experiencing something that is emotionally significant. Slow wave sleep helps to make those things stick, but the brain is incredibly busy even during sleep, and like a busy system, it creates waste. This includes leftover proteins, cellular debris, and byproducts that can build up and interfere with function. The glymphatic system, a special waste clearance system in the brain, is limited during the day. During slow wave sleep, though, it kicks into high gear as the space between brain cells widens. This allows cerebrospinal fluid to flow more freely throughout the brain, acting as a cleaning agent, washing away waste, including potentially harmful substances like beta amyloid. This keeps brain cells healthy and functioning properly. So slow wave sleep also physically protects your brain. It also supports long-term mental health. Significant variations of delta wave activity can be seen across the lifespan of humans, both in its frequency and occurrence and its amplitudes. In infancy and early childhood, delta waves dominate the electroencephalographic parts, showing the high demand for neurodevelopment processes like synaptogenesis, myelination, myelination, and the establishment of large-scale neural networks. As we age, the amount of intensity of delta activity also gradually declines and diminishes significantly for older people. Besides developmental trajectory, delta wave activity interacts dynamically with other brain oscillations such as theta, alpha, beta, and gamma waves. During the descent into deep sleep, the brain transmits from faster alpha and beta rhythms into slower theta and eventually delta frequencies. Intricate cross-frequencies coupling transitions, where slower delta waves modulate an amplitude or phase of faster oscillations like gamma waves, are not abrupt. These coupling supports information transfer across regions of the brain, which is essential for consolidation and synaptic downscaling. Delta waves are thought to act like timing mechanisms as well, coordinating and reactivating memory traces across the hippocampus and neocortex during sleep. They also provide a background rhythm that enables high-frequency bursts to occur in synchrony, creating a window of opportunity for neural plasticity and network refinement. Neural oscillations often govern the timing and intensity of biological phenomena, including animal migration and circadian cycles in planets. Cyclic low-frequency patterns such as oceanic tides, climate climate oscillation, and geophysical rhythm mirror the concept of delta-like periodicity, periodicity, yeah, in the pacing and regulatory influences. The artificial neural networks and computational models of cognitive delta-like waves simulate rest states or periods of reduced information processing, allowing the system to recalibrate, update weights, or prevent overload functions, similar to delta wave activity in the human brain. Collective behavior seen in animal groups, such as synchronized movements, show that slow-frequency coordination serves as a stabilizing force, showing how data waves integrative role plays a part in neuron populations, not only as a part of internal neurophysiological states, but also in a fundamental principle of temporal organization and systemic balance in both living and non-living systems. Representing one of the most consistently observed oscillatory patterns in the human brain, alpha wave activity is closely associated with states of relaxed wakefulness, calm alertness, and inward directed attention. When a person is awake but not actively processing information, usually during times of quiet reflection, meditation, or just before falling asleep, alpha waves occupy a faster frequency range than that of delta waves, considered to be a bridge between conscious thought and more introspective or resting mental states. Alpha wave presence is notable mostly in the occipital and parietal lobes when the eyes are closed, indicating a state of wakeful rest where sensory input is reduced and internal cognitive processes begin to dominate over a lifetime. Alpha activity demonstrates distinct developmental patterns. In early childhood, alpha rhythms are not fully developed and tend to be more variable and of lower amplitude. As children's brains mature into adolescence, the alpha waves become more stable and more symmetrical across hemispheres, stronger in their expression. This maturation reflects increasing neural synchronization in the refinement of thalamocortical circuits that generate and regulate alpha activity. During adulthood, Alpha wave activity remains relatively stable, particularly in people who engage in mindfulness practices, meditative states, or focused attention. As with delta waves, though, alpha waves also decline in later life, usually due to changes in cognitive performance, attention regulation, and working memory, suggesting that the alpha waves play a critical role in cognitive flexibility and attention gating. Alpha waves also serve as a neural filter that regulates rhythm that actively suppresses irrelevant information to enhance focus and minimize distraction. This is not a passive role either. Rather, it reflects the brain's ability to dynamically allocate resources by reducing cortical excitability in regions not currently needed for a specific task. This reveals a sophisticated system of interregional modulation, where alpha oscillation allows certain pathways to become more dominant while silencing others. Alpha waves, like delta waves, are also involved in timing, particularly in the timing of information flow, helping to organize and coordinate when and where signals are processed across different parts of the brain. These rhythms are critical in situations requiring anticipation, working memory, or the suppression of habitual responses in favor of intentional actions. In many cases, alpha waves provide a background rhythm that modulates the power or timing of gamma bursts associated with active processes of learning. In geometry, theta is used to represent an unknown angle or a special function used in various areas of mathematics, particularly in complex analysis and number theory. In polar coordinates, theta often represents the angle in relationship to the origin, and the letter itself is sometimes used to represent temperature or potential in certain physics formulas. Theta waves are a type of brainwave that occurs during periods of deep relaxation, light sleep, or meditation. They are often associated with a state of creativity, intuition, and memory consolidation. The interplay between alpha and theta rhythms is evident during meditation or trance-like states, where both relaxation and introspective awareness are heightened. Alpha Alpha rhythms may serve as a scaffold for mental imagery, memory retrieval, or emotional regulation in such a state. Outside of the brain, alpha-like rhythmic patterns can be seen in systems that rely on cycles of restraint and release, such as biological feedback loops, circadian biology, and certain technological systems. Predator-prey dynamics often oscillate around a balanced state where one species actually modulates the population and behavior of another. These regulatory cycles mirror how alpha rhythms constrain or permit neural activity. In digital networks, processing bandwidth is controlled by rhythmic modulation protocols, which conceptually aligns with how alpha waves manage the flow of information in the brain. These analogs underscore the universality the universality of oscillatory control mechanisms and represent a core principle of organized, adaptive, and diverse systems. The cerebellum contains deep cerebral nuclei, which are clusters of neurons serving as the cerebellum's output channels. These nuclei send signals to other parts of the brain to execute and fine-tune movements. They do this by processing input received from the spinal cord, sensory systems, and other parts of the brain. The cerebellum doesn't initiate movement, but rather adjusts and refines motor commands to ensure accuracy and precision. It continues to monitor and modify motor commands, allowing for fluid movements and the ability to adapt to changing conditions. Neuroplasticity is a process that enables the cerebellum to adjust to changes within the vestibular system. Vestibular rehabilitation therapy is one of several approaches that harness the cerebellum's plasticity in order to improve balance and coordination. Through therapeutic exercises that challenge the vestibular system, the cerebellum is encouraged to adapt and help restore balance. Through neuromodulation, a physiological process, certain neurons use chemicals to regulate diverse populations of other neurons, modifying their activity rather than directly triggering an action potential. Unlike traditional neurotransmission, which works through point-to-point synaptic communication to produce immediate, short-lived effects, neuromodulation has more prolonged and widespread influence on the neural network. This modulation can affect the excitability, firing patterns, or responsiveness of entire neural circuits, reshaping how information is processed in the brain or nervous system over time. A variety of chemical messengers act as neuromodulators, such as dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, acetylcholine, norepinephrine, acetylcholine, and certain neuropeptides. These substances don't necessarily cause neurons to fire, but instead adjust the condition under which firing might occur. Dopamine might increase the likelihood of a neuron responding to input, while serotonin might reduce responsiveness in another context. This capacity to finely tune neural activity makes neuromodulation fundamental for behavioral flexibility, mood regulation, arousal, attention, reward learning, motor control, and the sleep-wake cycle. The transition from wakefulness to sleep is governed by changing levels of neuromodulators like acetylcholine and norepinephrine. I'll say that. Norepinephrine. Acetylcholine enhances the signal-to-noise ratio in sensory systems, making the brain more attuned to relevant stimuli. In the reward system, dopamine adjusts motivational salience, reinforcing behaviors that result in pleasurable outcomes. Beyond pharmacology, this concept has also been applied in technological interventions, medical devices that deliver electrical or magnetic stimulation, such as deep brain stimulation, vagus nerve stimulation, and transcranial magnetic stimulation can modulate neural activity. What makes neuromodulation especially intriguing is that it acts as a regulatory overlay to the brain's communication system. Rather than altering the content of signals traveling through neural circuits, it changes how those signals are perceived, prioritized, or integrated. It functions as a higher order control system that can modify an overall tone, pace, it can modify the overall tone, pace, or responsiveness of neural operations, allowing the brain to adapt to both internal states and external demands. A branch of physiology called electrophysiology studies the electrical properties of biological cells and tissues. It focuses on the flow of ions in biological systems and how these ionic movements generate electrical currents that drive cellular activity, particularly in neurons, muscle fibers, and cardiac tissues. Electrophysiology investigates how electrical signals are generated, transmitted, and interpreted within organisms, and how those signals control functions ranging from the heartbeat to thought. It emphasizes how neurons use electrical impulse or action potentials to communicate. These impulses are created when a neuron's membrane potential rapidly shifts due to the movement of sodium, potassium, calcium, and chloride ions across the cell membrane through specialized proteins called ion channels. The voltage changes that result propagate along axons, and lead to the release of neurotransmitters at synapses, enabling the signal to transfer to the next cell. Electrophysiological records capture this activity either at the level of single neurons or across populations of cells, offering insight into the timing patterns and the strength of neural communication. One technique in electrophysiology is the use of the electroencephalogram, which measures electrical activity in the brain via electrodes placed on the scalp. This allows researchers to examine patterns of brain waves such as delta, theta, alpha, beta, and gamma rhythms, which correspond to different states of consciousness, attention, and cognitive function. Intracellular recordings allow scientists to explore the electrical behavior of individual neurons, including their responses to synaptic input and firing characteristics. Electrophysiology is also applied to muscle physiology, sensory systems, and even artificial systems that interact with the body. Devices like cochlear implants and brain-machine interfaces depend on principles of electrophysiology to convert electrical signals into inputs and outputs for communication or control. Biological function is governed by rapid changes in feedback loops that happen in milliseconds. Electrophysiological techniques provide a window into these quick processes, helping researchers understand how organisms respond to stimuli and how information moves through networks. The concept of the cognitive cerebellum is gaining traction in neuroscience. The cerebellum is involved in higher level cognitive functions such as planning, decision making, and problem solving. It depends on its intricate neural circuitry to coordinate movement and process sensory input, or it depends on intricate neural circuitry. This circuitry includes various types of fibers and uh, neurotransmitters that work together to fine-tune motor commands. Two primary fiber types in this system are mossy fibers and climbing fibers. Mossy fibers originate from multiple sources, including the spinal cord and brainstem, and project to the cerebral cortex. They synapse onto granule cells, which in turn send parallel fibers to synapse onto Purkinje cells. Purkinje cells then send inhibitory signals to the deep cerebral or cerebellar nuclei, which acts as the cerebellum's output channels. Climbing fibers, in contrast, originate from the anterior olive in the brainstem and project directly to the Purkinje cells. Each Purkinje cell receives input from a single climbing fiber, which delivers powerful excitatory input. This distinctive setup allows climbing fibers to play a key role in motor learning plasticity. Long-term potentiation and long-term depression are also integral to the cerebellum's circuitry. As forms of synaptic plasticity, long-term potentiation and long-term depression occur at the synapses between parallel fibers and Purkinje cells, allowing the cerebellum to adjust the strength of these connections based on experience. This in turn fine-tunes motor commands in response to changing conditions. These are two essential processes that support the brain's ability to learn, remember, and adapt. These phenomena take place at the synapses, where neurons communicate with one another, involving enduring changes in the strength of those connections. These mechanisms are central to what is known as synaptic plasticity, the brain's ability to change its structure and function in response to experience, activity, or environmental input. Long-term potentiation refers to a sustained increase in synaptic strength that follows high-frequency stimulation of a synapse. When two neurons are repeatedly in synchronous, synchronous, synchronously and synchronously activated. The connection between them grows stronger over time. This improved efficiency means that future signals between the neurons are more likely to elicit a response. This process is a vital mechanism through which memories are encoded and stored in the brain. At the cellular level, a long-term potentiation involves a variety of changes, including increased neurotransmitter release, heightened receptor sensitivity or quantity, especially of glutamate receptors, and structural changes like the development of new synaptic spines. These adaptations allow the receiving neurons to respond more vigorously to the same input in the future. Conversely, long-term depression is a lasting decrease in synaptic strength. It happens when synapses are activated at a lower frequency over a prolonged period, or when neuron activity is out of sync. Instead of reinforcing the connection, long-term depression weakens it, effectively reducing the signal transmission between involved neurons. This is not a form of damage or loss, but a refinement. Long-term depression is believed to support processes like forgetting, clearing irrelevant or outdated information, and avoiding saturation of synaptic activity, which is essential for preserving the adaptability of neural networks. Both long-term potentiation and long-term depression depend heavily on calcium signaling within neurons. The magnitude and timing of calcium influx through receptors determine which process will occur. A large rapid influx typically induces long-term potentiation, while a smaller, slower influx tends to favor long-term depression. These processes are not uniform across all brain regions, but are especially well studied in the hippocampus, a region associated with learning and memory. However, they also take place in the cortex, cerebellum, and other regions, where they support sensory processing, motor learning, and cognitive flexibility. Long-term potentiation and long-term depression are not simple opposites. They work together as complementary mechanisms that fine-tune neural networks over time. Learning involves not only strengthening relevant connections, but also weakening those that are unnecessary. This balance permits effective storage, retrieval, and revision of information. The flexibility these mechanisms offer ensures that the brain can respond to new experiences, shift focus, and alter behavior. Long-term potentiation and long-term depression form a cellular foundation for much of what is understood as memory, learning, and neural adaptability. Okay, I got through that, and that is pretty much all of it. I've been able to go through there and catch everything up on what I have covered so far. And I hope I did a better job this time because I know through a lot of that I messed it up. I know a few words that I messed up this time too, but it sounded a little bit better than what it was before. So with that, I am going to check and see if we have anybody in the chats that is wanting to make a comment. We have 3 viewers on Rumble. Got 2 viewers on Kick. Somebody made a comment on Kick, but it's just a spammer wanting me to buy views. Um, Nothing that I can see on X. We have 2 viewers on Twitch, and right now we have 1 current viewer on YouTube, but there's been 54 views on there, and I can never tell how many people are actually on D Live. It never tells me. So with that, I don't have any comments, so I can go ahead and end this. I hope you guys did enjoy this. At least, hopefully, you guys understood some of it. Like I said, I've been working on this for a while. I'm not done with it. I just wanted to take today so so that I could recap on where I've been and just kind of focus on the readings, get them out there into a good stream. I've been working on getting the stuff written out, and it's been a challenge for me. Um, but I'm getting there, and I will be back next week with another episode of the Cosmic Weave. I hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, please like, subscribe, share, make comments. Making comments doesn't only help with the algorithm, but I also enjoy um, responding to your comments. All I ask is when you make a comment, don't be a dick about it. If you disagree with what I'm saying, um, give your feedback, whatever, but just be respectful. I'll be the same with you. With that being said, I hope you guys enjoy your day, uh, your morning, evening, or night, whatever time it is where you're at. And I will talk to you later.